Freddie was born on May Day 2 years ago, 2017. And during the pregnancy itself, it was fine. I had some anxiety. I worry about everything anyway and have a history of worrying about everything. So I was always anxious about things, always aware of things. But he was fine during the pregnancy other than a rather extreme morning sickness. However, when at 38 weeks pregnant, I suddenly realised that I hadn't felt him move for a long time. And I was lying there trying to feel movements, and I could feel small movements but no kicks, so I went in to get checked out. And when we were in the triage, they hooked me up, and he did have a heartbeat. At one point they were worried that they couldn't feel a heartbeat and that it was my heart that they were hearing instead. But he did have a heartbeat, but after half an hour they realised that he wasn't moving at all. And an ultrasound confirmed that he wasn't moving and something was wrong. So they tried to start labour, but they couldn't get it started successfully, which was incredibly lucky, because had they done that, had we tried to have a natural birth, he would have died. And instead, they took me through to a C-section, which quickly turned into a crash C-section when his heartbeat started to slow even more. I had suffered from something called a fetal maternal hemorrhage, which is incredibly rare. I stayed in Gloucester Royal and he was taken, I saw him for about 5 minutes, and then he was taken to St Michael's in Bristol for cooling therapy. So after that it was a bit of a waiting game. First of all, his heart was always okay and his digestive system was okay, but then he had kidney and liver failure. But they did recover almost all on their own. He didn't need dialysis or anything like that. And we then went back to GRH. So he came home a month after he had been in the NICU. And that's when it all fell apart. Because I think the adrenaline had been keeping me going, and I possibly made a big mistake, because one of my biggest problems since he's been born is that lots of my friends and my brother had children around the same time. I think the normality of their lives compared with our lives and what we'd been through hit me a lot. Plus all the usual sleeplessness. That night I got scared and I didn't want to be in the situation that we were in. I wanted the normal life that everyone else seemed to be having. I woke up my husband, and that was really the start of when I officially got the postnatal depression. Was as we came out of hospital and everything hit, that what we'd been through. I am very, very lucky that I have an incredible support network. Both my family and my friends have been absolutely amazing, and without them I do not know where I would be. But I went through a fair few days of this, not knowing how to. People knew that I was in this state and I wasn't on my own, but I still didn't know what to do about it. We were having weekly blood tests, and it was on the first blood test that I took him to that I completely broke down when I was there. And I don't know what it was. I mean, obviously he was crying because he was being poked with a needle, but I just couldn't stop crying. And the wonderful staff there refused to let me go home. And they spoke to the perinatal mental health team, and they came over and they organised care between themselves and the crisis team. And between them, over the following few weeks, I pretty much lived at either my parents or my parents-in-law, and the crisis team would visit every day to make sure that I was okay. But also the perinatal team realised that I hadn't been doing anything for myself, that everything I was doing was to do with my children. Something I'd always wanted to do was to sew, and so I used it as an excuse to learn to sew, and so I watched lots of YouTube videos and got quite obsessed by it, and since then I've been trying to make as many of my children's clothes as I can, and it has had a huge impact. So being able to think about something else that's nothing to do with HIE, that's nothing to do with therapy, that's nothing to do with the boys, has been amazing for my mental health. It's really made a huge difference.